Welcome, everyone. My name is Barbara Fouché, Carrboro Town Council, Mayor Pro Tem. The BIPOC electeds are proud to present our Juneteenth Resolution Reading. Who are the BIPOC electeds? We are a rainbow coalition of Black and Brown elected officials from across Orange County. We have representation from the following: the towns of Carrboro, Chapel Hill, and Hillsborough, the Orange County Board of County Commissioners, the North Carolina General Assembly, the Orange County School Board, and the Chapel Hill Carrboro School Board. We meet regularly to discuss issues that impact the communities that we serve, as well as coming together for occasions such as this. We stand together in times of trouble and discord and support each other in our work. Now, I would like to introduce Ronnie Dossi of the Chapel Hill Carrboro School Board to talk about the purpose of this resolution. Ronnie.
Thank you, Barbara. Knowing history guides our understanding of what's happening in the world today, and it's necessary to help us consider how we better operate as a global community today and into the future. We, the elected officials of color of Orange County, North Carolina, prepared this resolution to honor Juneteenth. This American holiday is also known as Juneteenth, Independence Day, or Freedom Day, and it commemorates the June 19th, 1865 announcement of the abolition of slavery in Texas, and more generally, the emancipation of enslaved African Americans throughout the former Confederate States of America outside native lands. I'll turn it over to Joel Brown to begin the reading of the resolution.
Whereas Juneteenth is a celebration of the date, June 19th, 1865, when people who were enslaved in Texas were informed that the US government had officially outlawed the brutal practice of slavery 3 years prior with the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. And whereas the Emancipation Proclamation, issued on January 1, 1863, declared that the people who were enslaved in Confederate controlled states were officially free people. State action was used to abolish slavery in areas controlled by Union forces, with the exceptions of Kentucky and Delaware, where slavery was finally ended by the 13th Amendment in December 1865. And
whereas, isolated from both Union and Confederate forces during the Civil War, Texas had become a refuge for those who wished to continue the practices of holding human beings as property. And whereas, since the capture of New Orleans in 1862, people held human beings as property in Mississippi, Louisiana, and other points east had been migrating to Texas to escape the Union Army's reach, and more than 150,000 people held in bondage had been moved to Texas. And the white people of Texas actively worked to ensure that the people held in bondage, who should have been freed in 1863, did not hear the freedom granted by the Emancipation Proclamation. And
whereas, although the Emancipation Proclamation was issued on January 1st, 1863, there were still a total of 250,000 people held as human chattel in Texas when U.S. Army General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and on June 19, 1865, Juneteenth, proclaimed the war had ended, and so had the captivity of people who had been enslaved. And whereas the following is the text of the official recorded version of the order, the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly in their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. And
whereas although news of emancipation came at different times during that Texas summer and autumn 1865, African Americans in Texas started to celebrate the freedom of enslaved persons on Juneteenth, as their day of celebration. And whereas beginning in 1866, they held parades, barbecues, and gave speeches in remembrance of their liberation. The oldest of the surviving formerly enslaved people were often given a place of honor, and Black Texans initially used these gatherings to attempt to locate family members from whom they had been separated, and soon these events became staging areas for family reunions and an opportunity to uplift each other as they moved through hostile environments. And
whereas by 1900, Juneteenth had unofficially become Texas Emancipation Day and was sponsored by Black churches and civic organizations. And whereas with the migration of African Americans from Texas to the West Coast, especially during World War II, Juneteenth grew in the emergent Black communities of Los Angeles, San Diego, and Oakland in California, Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. And
whereas activists in the 1980s began to advocate for wider recognition of the Juneteenth holiday, and whereas Texas became the first state to make Juneteenth a state holiday, and
whereas by June 2020, 47 states and the District of Columbia had established either full or partial recognition of the holiday. Only Hawaii, North Dakota, and South Dakota have not. And whereas Juneteenth is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States, and
whereas Juneteenth has been declared a paid holiday by the governing bodies of Orange County, Town of Chapel Hill, the Town of Carrboro, the Town of Hillsborough, the Orange County School District, and the Chapel Hill Carrboro City School District. So, whereas the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution passed by Congress on January 31st, 1865, and ratified by the required 27 of the then 36 states on December 6, 1865, and proclaimed on December 18, 1865, abolished slavery and involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. And
whereas we recognize that while the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment may have officially ended the legal practice of enslaving human beings in the United States of America 156 years later, there is still progress which must be made to dismantle the insidious systems and practices which continue to harm Black people and deny them access to the rights and resources to which they are entitled. So, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Black, Indigenous, and people of color elected officials, honoring the perseverance and hope that inspired African Americans to celebrate freedom, to look for lost relatives, and to thrive in a hostile and white supremacist environment, recognize Juneteenth as an important date in American history. And
furthermore, we will honor their legacy by building a more equitable future for our children, our children's children, and their children, and we will continue to advocate and work to that end. Adopted on June 19th, 2021. Joel H. Brown, Alan Bowensi, Ronnie Dossi, Barbara M. Foshee, Valerie P. Foshee, Hung Bin Gu, Jean Hamilton, Matthew Hughes, Ty Quinn, Jennifer Moore, Renee A. Price, Brenda Stevens, and Dion Timney.
Happy Juneteenth!
Happy
Juneteenth!
Juneteenth!
Happy Juneteenth!